Malik Carter stood just outside the sliding glass doors of Grady Memorial Hospital, his sneakers tapping nervously against the concrete. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant, mixed with the fried food drifting from a food truck across the street. He tugged at the frayed sleeve of his hoodie, trying to summon courage. His chest tightened, but he pushed through the doors anyway, the sharp hiss of the air conditioning brushing his skin. At the front desk, a tired nurse looked up. Her badge read, Ms. Green. "Can I help you, young man?" she asked, her tone brisk, already expecting trouble. Malik swallowed, his voice catching in his throat. The stutter that had haunted him since childhood rose like a wall, but he forced the words out. I can wake her. If I sing." The nurse blinked, her pen pausing mid-scribble. "Excuse me?" He shifted from foot to foot, heat crawling up his neck. "Nia Daniels, room 307. If I sing to her, she'll wake." Her lips pressed tight, somewhere between disbelief and irritation. She gestured toward the waiting area. "Why don't you sit down, sweetheart? Family only for visits." Malik's heart thudded. He wasn't family, not by blood, but he remembered the way Nia once leaned across a cafeteria table, whispering, "You don't need to be like them, Malik, just be you." And now she lay silent, wrapped in tubes and wires after the accident that shattered half the school's heart. Two men in scrubs chuckled as they walked past. One muttered under his breath, "Wake her with a song. These kids watch too many movies." Their laughter echoed behind him, burning Malik's ears. He clenched his fists, wishing his words didn't tangle every time he tried to speak his truth. But he didn't turn back. Weeks earlier, the yellow school bus had flipped on I-20 during morning traffic. Rain-slick pavement, screams, sirens. Malik should have been there. But Grandma Ruth, sharp-eyed and cautious, had insisted he stay home that morning. "Your cough sounds bad," she'd said, setting hot tea on the table. Hours later, the news flashed across the screen, and Malik saw Nia's face among the injured. Guilt had been gnawing at him ever since. He remembered their last conversation in English class. She'd leaned back in her chair, braids brushing her notebook, and asked, "You ever notice you don't stutter when you sing?" He had shrugged, embarrassed. "You got a gift," she said, smiling. "Don't hide it." That memory was why he was here now. He lowered himself into a chair in the waiting area, the plastic hard and cold beneath him. The television overhead buzzed with a daytime talk show no one was watching. An old man coughed in the corner. A mother shushed her crying toddler. The world carried on, but Malik's focus stayed on the elevator that would take him to the third floor. His throat tightened again, this time not from the stutter but from determination. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through recordings he had made late at night when Grandma Ruth was asleep. His voice, shaky at first, stronger later, filled the tiny speaker. Notes of gospel blended with old R&B his mother used to play before she passed. It wasn't perfect, but it was him. A woman sitting nearby tilted her head. "That you singing, baby?" Malik nodded, eyes down. "Well, don't let nobody laugh at that," she said kindly. "Sounds like healing to me." Her words clung to him like a thread of light. The elevator doors opened with a ding, and for a moment, Malik imagined stepping inside, walking down the corridor to Nia's room, and proving everyone wrong. He could almost hear her laugh again, see the spark in her eyes. But then a sharp voice snapped him back. "Young man, visiting hours are limited," Ms. Green called from the desk. "Unless you're family, you can't go up." Malik froze. His courage faltered, slipping like water through his hands. He shoved his phone back into his pocket, standing slowly. His sneakers squeaked on the tile as he turned toward the door, shoulders heavy. Outside, Atlanta's late afternoon sun beat down, hot and merciless. The noise of car horns and chatter from pedestrians filled the street. Malik stopped on the sidewalk, gripping the straps of his backpack so tight his knuckles whitened. They didn't believe him. They laughed. But something inside him refused to give up, because he knew with every beat of his heart if he sang she would hear him, and tomorrow he would try again. The next morning Malik sat at the small kitchen table, stirring sugar into his bowl of oatmeal until it turned grey. The sound of gospel floated from the living room radio, where Grandma Ruth hummed along, her voice strong and steady even after decades of singing in church choirs. She glanced at him from her recliner, eyes sharp behind her glasses. "You went down to that hospital yesterday, didn't you?" she asked, more statement than question. Malik froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. "I just wanted to see her." Grandma Ruth set her glasses down and leaned forward. "Listen to me, boy. Folks in that hospital don't have patience for fairy tales. Don't be making a fool of yourself in front of those white coats. You hear me?" Her words cut deep. She wasn't cruel, just protective, but they left Malik feeling smaller than he already did. He nodded silently, pushing the oatmeal away. When she went back to humming, Malik slipped his tape recorder into his hoodie pocket. He couldn't shake the pull, like something inside him kept calling him back to Nia's room. By late afternoon, Malik stood outside Grady again, his heart racing as he watched visitors stream through the doors. The smell of exhaust and hot asphalt clung to the air. He waited until the receptionist's shift changed, then slipped inside, his steps light and deliberate. The elevator dinged, and this time he didn't hesitate. He rode up, palms sweating, rehearsing the words he wanted to say but probably couldn't. His stutter always betrayed him at the worst times. Room 307 was quiet except for the low beep of machines. The curtains were partly drawn, sunlight slanting across Nia's pale face. Her braids were neatly tied back, her skin smooth but drained of color. Malik's throat tightened. He pulled the tape recorder from his pocket, thumb hovering over the play button. But something inside told him that wasn't enough. He needed to sing himself, even if his voice cracked. He sat in the chair beside her bed, leaning forward. His chest rose and fell as he tried to find courage. "Nia," he whispered, his voice trembling. "It's me. Malik." No response. Only the steady rhythm of machines. He swallowed hard, shut his eyes and began to sing. The first note stumbled out, broken and uncertain, his stutter almost wrapping around the lyrics. But then, as the melody carried forward, the stutter faded, melting into rhythm. His voice, rough but soulful, filled the room. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. The words rose and fell, carried by memories of afternoons in the library, the sound of her laugh, the way she once told him to stop hiding that gift. Just as his voice steadied, a laugh echoed from the hallway. Two nurses lingered at the door, whispering and giggling. One whispered too loudly, "Lord, this boy thinks he's in some Disney movie." The sound pierced Malik's chest. His throat closed, the song collapsing mid-note. Heat rushed to his face. He stood quickly, shoving the recorder into his pocket, eyes burning. One of the nurses, trying to soften the sting, said, "Sweet thing, you should go on home. Singing won't change nothing here." Malik turned away before they could see the tears welling. His sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as he walked out, faster and faster until he was in the stairwell, the door slamming behind him. He pressed his back against the cool concrete wall, gasping for air. The laughter replayed in his head, mocking, relentless. For a moment he hated himself for even trying. But then, faint under the echo of their ridicule, he remembered the way Nia had once defended him in front of the whole class, her voice firm and fearless. "Leave him alone. He got more talent than you ever will." That memory pulled him back from the edge. His humiliation burned, but it didn't erase the truth he felt in his chest. Wiping his eyes with his sleeve, Malik whispered into the empty stairwell, "I'll be back, I'll try again." The sound bounced off the walls, soft but certain. Even if no one believed him, even if they laughed, he knew this wasn't the end. Malik sat on the edge of his bed, his small room dimly lit by the flicker of a street lamp outside. The walls were bare except for a single poster of Marvin Gaye that Grandma Ruth had let him keep. His tape recorder rested on the nightstand, the red button worn from use. He picked it up, pressing rewind, and the sound of his own voice spilled out, hesitant notes, then smoother ones, layered with the echoes of his past attempts. He remembered the first time he realized his stutter disappeared when he sang. It was in the church basement years ago, when Grandma had dragged him along to choir practice. He had wandered away, embarrassed by the way the kids laughed whenever he tried to read aloud. Alone in the basement, he had picked up an old hymn book and whispered the words. At first they tripped and stumbled, but when he sang them, the syllables flowed. His voice, untrained but clear, filled the hollow space. That moment had felt like a secret doorway opening, but it was also a curse, because outside of music, the words still betrayed him. Grandma Ruth had noticed, of course. One night she had caught him humming at the kitchen sink, the stutter gone. "The Lord gave you that voice," she'd said, "but don't think it's going to make the world easier for you. They don't clap for black boys till they bleed first." Malik hadn't fully understood back then, but her words clung to him now. Music was freedom, but freedom didn't erase judgment, laughter, or the weight of being different. The door creaked open, and Auntie Tasha stepped in without knocking as usual. She carried the smell of hair products and the faint tang of fried chicken from the shop where she worked. Her hoop earrings caught the lamplight. "Boy, you sitting in here brooding again?" she teased, dropping into the chair by his desk. Malik shrugged. Just listening." Tasha tilted her head, catching the faint echo of his recorded voice. You sound better than half the wannabe singers I hear at open mics. What you hiding in here for?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "They laugh, every time, even the nurses." Her expression softened. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "Malik, let me tell you something. The world gonna laugh no matter what you do, but you know what shuts 'em up? Winning. Owning your gift so strong they can't deny you." He stayed quiet, chewing on her words. "You got a voice, baby," she continued. "Not just to make noise, but to move people. Don't run from it. And don't let fear choke you out." For the first time all day, Malik managed a small smile. Tasha always had a way of cutting through his doubt. After she left, he lay back on the bed staring at the cracked ceiling. The sound of his neighborhood drifted through the open window, the low thump of bass from a car rolling by, kids laughing on the corner, someone arguing 2 houses down. Atlanta was alive, restless, and so was he. He pressed record again, this time daring to sing louder. The melody of an old Sam Cooke song filled the room. His voice cracked on the high notes, but the imperfections made it feel raw, human. With each verse, his chest loosened, the weight lifting little by little. When the last note faded, silence returned. But instead of emptiness, it carried a strange comfort. His voice had carved out space where fear usually lived. Still, as he set the recorder down, the echo of the nurse's laughter from the hospital returned to him, sharp and bitter. That was the curse. No matter how good it felt to sing, the world outside didn't see the boy with the gift. They saw the stutter, the awkwardness, the outcast. Malik closed his eyes, whispering into the darkness, "If she hears me, that's enough." The thought lingered as sleep slowly pulled him under, leaving a fragile promise in the air. He wasn't done trying. The hallway on the 3rd floor of Grady Memorial was lined with quiet footsteps, hushed conversations, and the steady rhythm of machines. Malik stood at the corner, his palms slick against the straps of his backpack. He had been here twice before, once turned away, once laughed at. But today he wasn't leaving without seeing her. Through the glass window of room 307, he caught a glimpse of Nia Daniels. She looked nothing like the girl he remembered from school. The lively sparkle in her eyes, the quick grin that always seemed ready, was gone. Instead, her body lay still beneath a thin hospital blanket, tubes tracing from her arms, machines blinking around her like watchful guardians. Malik's throat tightened. Memories rushed in, pulling him backward too before the accident. It had been a Tuesday afternoon in the school library, the scent of old paper heavy in the air. Malik had sat hunched over his notebook, struggling with an English assignment, words tangled on the page the same way they tangled on his tongue. Nia had slid into the seat beside him, her braids swaying as she leaned over his shoulder. "You overthinking it," she'd said with a grin. "Just write what you feel," he had stammered, embarrassed. I don't do feeling so good." "Yes, you do," she insisted, tapping the paper. "I heard you humming in class the other day. That's feeling. You just don't like folks noticing." He remembered how her laughter had softened the edge of his frustration, how she stayed until his sentences made sense. No one else ever had the patience. And then there was that day on the basketball court. Corey and Jamal had started teasing him again, mocking the way he tripped over words. Malik had frozen, his face burning. But Nia had stepped in, her voice fierce. "Y'all need to quit. He's smarter than both of you put together." The silence that followed was electric. For once, the bullies had nothing to say. And Malik, standing there with his heart pounding, had seen her in a new light. Now staring at her fragile body in the hospital bed, guilt clawed at him. He was supposed to be on that bus too. He remembered Grandma Ruth shaking her head that morning, telling him to stay home because of his cough. If he had gone, would he have sat next to Nia? Would he have helped? Or would he be lying here instead? His chest ached with the questions. He whispered through the glass, almost afraid the words would vanish. "I'm sorry, Nia. I should have been there." The door creaked, and a nurse carrying a clipboard stepped out. She eyed Malik curiously. "You family?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Well, visiting hours for friends are limited," she said gently. 5 minutes and keep it quiet." Malik nodded quickly, slipping past her before she could change her mind. The room was colder than he expected, the hum of machines loud in the stillness. He sank into the chair by her bed, his hands fidgeting in his lap. Up close she looked peaceful, but it wasn't the kind of peace that comforted. It was the silence of someone too far away. He leaned forward. "Dunya, it's me." His voice cracked. "You told me not to hide, remember?" The words trembled, but his heart steadied. He wanted to sing, but the memory of the nurse's laughter still stung. Instead, he sat in silence, watching the faint rise and fall of her chest. Minutes slipped by, heavy and endless. The machines beeped in steady rhythm, a cruel reminder that her body fought on while her spirit seemed so far away. Finally, Malik stood, his knees weak, but his resolve firming. He touched the edge of the blanket lightly, almost reverently. "I'll be back," he whispered. "I promise." As he walked out of room 307, the echo of his vow followed him. For the first time, he felt a flicker of determination that no laughter could erase. The air outside Grady Memorial was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to Malik's skin and made every breath feel heavy. He sat on the curb across the street, knees drawn to his chest, clutching his tape recorder. For a moment he thought about just walking home, but something inside told him he wasn't done. He pressed record, raised the little device close, and began singing softly. His voice trembled at first, then grew steadier as the melody carried him. The cars rushing by, the chatter of pedestrians, even the wail of an ambulance siren faded under his song. It was just him and the memory of Nia's laughter, pushing him forward, but not everyone heard it that way. Corey and Jamal, leaning against their bikes at the corner, spotted him. Jamal nudged Corey, grinning. "Look at this fool, serenading the sidewalk." Corey pulled out his phone, already recording. "Yo, Malik, you trying to wake the whole city, or just your girlfriend in there?" The words stung, but Malik kept singing, refusing to let their laughter choke him. His voice cracked on a high note, and Jamal howled with laughter. Corey zoomed in closer, mocking, "Sing it again, bro. Do the part where you sound like a dying cat." Malik's cheeks burned. His throat tightened, but he forced himself not to stop. He sang louder, as if volume alone could drown them out. People walking past slowed, some smirking, some whispering. A few even shook their heads. "Man, this is going online," Corey said, tapping his screen with satisfaction. "Everybody at school gonna love this." By evening, the video was already making rounds on social media. Malik sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the comments with a hollow ache in his chest. "Bro really think he magic? This is comedy gold. Somebody get him off TikTok." There were a few kinder ones buried between the ridicule. "He actually don't sound bad though," and "Leave him alone, he trying." But the cruel ones were louder, sharper, impossible to ignore. He slammed the phone down, covering his face with his hands. His stutter had always been his shame, but now his voice, the one thing that set him free, was being twisted into another reason to mock him. The bedroom door creaked, and Grandma Ruth appeared in her nightgown, her expression unreadable. She held his phone, the screen still glowing with the video. "Malik Carter," she said firmly, What is this mess I'm seeing? He stammered. I was singing for her. Her sigh was heavy, the kind that carried both love and disappointment. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded. Boy, I told you not to go making a fool of yourself. Now the whole city laughing, you chasing ghosts, Malik. Tears stung his eyes. I'm not. She'll hear me. I know she will. Grandma Ruth's voice softened. I know you miss that girl, but you can't carry the world on your shoulders. God works in his own time. You can't force a miracle. Her words were meant to comfort, but they pressed against him like another wall he couldn't climb. He turned away, silent, afraid his voice would break if he spoke. That night he lay awake, the glow of the streetlight spilling across his ceiling. The laughter from Corey and Jamal echoed in his mind, replaying over and over. But beneath it, faint but insistent, was the memory of Nia's voice telling him not to hide. He whispered into the dark, I won't stop. Not till you hear me. Even as exhaustion pulled him into uneasy sleep, the vow burned steady inside him. The world could laugh, but he wasn't done. The morning after the video spread, Malik walked back to Grady with his hood pulled low, headphones covering his ears. He tried to drown out the sting of laughter that followed him in the hallways of school and now echoed online. His phone buzzed with notifications, but he ignored them. This wasn't about them. It was about Nia. Inside the hospital, the familiar scent of antiseptic wrapped around him. His sneakers squeaked as he made his way to the 3rd floor, heart pounding with both fear and determination. He didn't care if people laughed again. He was coming back. When he reached room 307, he slipped inside quietly. The machines hummed, steady and unforgiving. Nia lay motionless, her chest rising with each assisted breath. Malik sat down, pulled his recorder from his hoodie, and pressed play. His own voice filled the room, carrying a gospel tune. He let the sound wash over her, as if the notes might seep through the silence. Unbeknownst to him, Dr. Taryn Jacobs stood just outside the door, reviewing patient files on her tablet. She paused when she caught the faint thread of music. Frowning, she leaned against the doorway, curious. Inside, Malik began singing live, voice trembling, but stronger than before. He closed his eyes, pouring everything into each word. He didn't notice the way the monitor flickered ever so slightly, a small irregularity in the steady rhythm of Nia's brain activity. Dr. Jacobs's brows furrowed. She turned back to the chart on her tablet, scrolling through recent readings. The data was flat, consistent, until yesterday. A spike, almost imperceptible during the exact time the nurses had logged unauthorized visitor in patient's room. Her chest tightened. Coincidence? Or something more? Inside the room, Malik felt the weight of eyes on him. He looked up, startled to see a woman in a white coat watching silently. His voice faltered. I'm sorry, he stammered, standing quickly. I'll go. But instead of scolding, Dr. Jacobs raised a hand. Wait, that was you yesterday, wasn't it? The singing. Malik's cheeks burned. They laughed, said it was stupid. Her gaze softened. And yet you're back. He nodded, gripping the recorder tight. Because I know she can hear me, I know it. Dr. Jacobs studied him carefully. She had seen countless cases, families clinging to hope long after medicine had delivered its verdict. But this boy's conviction wasn't just wishful thinking. It was steady, fierce, unshaken even under ridicule. Tell me, she said slowly, why do you believe your singing matters? Malik swallowed hard. Because when I sing, words come out right. They don't trip over themselves. And Nia always said, my voice could reach people even if I didn't believe it. For a moment the room was filled only with the steady beeping of the monitors. Dr. Jacobs glanced again at the chart in her hands. That flicker in the brain activity log tugged at her thoughts. She stepped closer to the bed, eyes narrowing at the subtle twitch of Nia's fingers. Maybe it was nothing. But maybe. Malik, she said finally, I can't promise you anything, but I'll keep an eye on her vitals next time you sing. If there's a connection, I'll see it." His heart leapt. You believe me?" "I believe in evidence," she replied, though her voice carried a note of warmth. "But I also believe in giving every chance we can." Malik's lips curved into the faintest smile. For the first time, someone wasn't dismissing him. Someone was listening. As he left the room, his chest felt lighter despite the weight of the world outside. Dr. Jacobs remained by Nia's bedside, her sharp eyes watching the monitor, replaying that flicker in her mind. She didn't know yet what it meant, but she knew this much: she wasn't laughing. Malik walked home under a sky heavy with grey clouds, his footsteps dragging on the cracked sidewalk. The memory of Dr. Jacobs's words replayed in his head. She hadn't laughed. She hadn't brushed him off. She wanted evidence, yes, but that was more than anyone else had ever given him. When he reached the small brick house, Grandma Ruth was asleep in her recliner, the TV flickering faint light across her face. He slipped past quietly, retreating to his room. His tape recorder waited on the desk, along with the old hymnal he had borrowed years ago. He pressed play, his own voice filling the silence, but tonight it wasn't enough. A knock startled him. The door creaked open, and to his surprise, Mr. Rivers stepped in. Malik blinked in disbelief. "Mr. Rivers, what are you doing here?" The music teacher, still dressed in his corduroy jacket and tie, carried a small bag and an expression of quiet determination. "I saw that video, Malik, and I saw the comments. Some were cruel, but some noticed." "More important, I noticed." Malik's stomach tightened. "Everybody laughed." "Not everybody," Mr. Rivers said firmly. He set the bag on the desk and pulled out a microphone, a portable speaker, and a small soundboard. "I kept these when they cut the music program. Figured one day they might matter again." Malik's eyes widened. You saved all that?" "Music doesn't die just because schools decide it's not worth funding," Mr. Rivers replied. "It lives in us, and it sure as hell lives in you." The teacher plugged in the equipment, the soft crackle of static filling the room. He handed Malik the microphone. "Go on, sing something." "Doesn't matter if you mess up." Malik hesitated, the weight of every mocking voice pressing against him. But then he thought of Nia, her words urging him not to hide. He closed his eyes and began softly, the opening lines of a gospel hymn Grandma often hummed on Sunday mornings. His voice trembled, but the microphone carried it with warmth, filling the small room. "Mr. Rivers nodded, adjusting the levels on the board. "Good, now louder, let it out." Malik pushed harder, the sound rising from his chest, rough around the edges but rich with emotion. His stutter vanished as the melody carried him. When he finished, his throat felt raw, but a strange relief washed over him. Mr. Rivers clapped once. "That's it. That's the voice I remember. The one that doesn't stutter. The one that speaks through music." Malik's cheeks flushed. "But they won't listen, they just laugh." "Let them laugh," Mr. Rivers said, his tone sharp. "You think every great black artist wasn't laughed at before the world caught up? Nina Simone, Sam Cooke, even Aretha. They all had doubters. What matters is whether you believe in your own sound." Malik let the words sink in. For the first time in weeks, his chest felt lighter. Later, after Mr. Rivers left, Malik sat cross-legged on his bed, the microphone still in his hands. He sang again, this time without fear of being overheard. His voice wove through the notes of gospel and old soul, the kind of music Grandma called medicine for the spirit. Through the thin walls, Grandma Ruth stirred, listening silently. She didn't interrupt, didn't scold. She just sat in the dark, her lips trembling with unspoken emotion. When Malik finally set the mic down, sweat dampened his brow, but his heart beat steady. The words of Mr. Rivers echoed in his head. "Music lives in you." And Malik knew then, with a certainty that cut through doubt, that his fight wasn't only about Nia anymore. It was about claiming his voice, no matter who tried to silence it. Malik returned to Grady with a new kind of determination humming inside him. The microphone Mr. Rivers had given him was tucked safely in his backpack, along with the small speaker. His hands shook as he set up quietly in the corner of Nia's hospital room. Dr. Jacobs had arranged for him to be allowed inside for a short, supervised session. The machines ticked and beeped in their rhythm, indifferent as always. Malik adjusted the mic with trembling fingers, his throat tight. "Doctor." Jacobs watched silently from near the monitors, her eyes sharp, searching. He closed his eyes and began. The first notes rose soft, then stronger, his voice carrying the weight of every memory, every ounce of guilt and hope. The hymn shifted into an old Sam Cooke tune, his tone rough but aching with sincerity. His chest loosened as the melody filled the room, wrapping around Nia like a blanket of sound. For a moment nothing changed. The machines carried on as if mocking him. Doubt rushed in. Maybe it was foolish after all. Maybe the laughter had been right. And then, the smallest twitch. Her fingers curled, so faint he almost thought he imagined it. "But doctor..." Jacobs gasped softly, her eyes snapping to the monitor. A slight spike in brain activity. Real, measurable, undeniable. Malik's heart leapt, his voice catching. "Nania, you hear me?" The machines steadied again, and her body lay still. But Malik had seen it, and so had Dr. Jacobs. She scribbled quickly on her clipboard, her voice low but urgent. "Keep singing." "Don't stop." He obeyed, pouring himself into each note until his throat felt raw. When he finally stopped, sweat dampened his forehead. The room returned to silence, but the image of her hand twitching burned in his mind like fire. Later that day, Dr. Jacobs met him in the hallway. "What you did today, it caused a change, small but real. The problem is the hospital board doesn't want unapproved methods in patient care." Malik's stomach sank. "So, I can't sing anymore?" Her jaw tightened. "Not officially. They'll call it unscientific. But I saw what I saw. Don't let their rules silence you." Before Malik could respond, Corey and Jamal appeared at the end of the hall, phones out again. Corey smirked. "Look who's back, trying to wake Sleeping Beauty with his mixtape," Jamal snorted. "Man, you need to stop embarrassing yourself. Whole school clowning you and you still at it." Their voices carried down the hall, drawing curious glances. Malik's fists clenched, but he refused to lash out. Instead, he lifted his chin and said quietly, "She moved." "You didn't see it, but she did." The boys laughed louder. Corey held up his phone. "Say it again for the camera, bro." Before things escalated, Dr. Jacobs stepped forward, her voice sharp as a blade. "That's enough. This is a hospital, not your playground. Put the phones away or I'll have security escort you out." They froze under her glare, muttered something under their breath, and left. Malik's chest loosened with relief, but the sting of their laughter still lingered. That night, scrolling through his phone at home, he saw the hashtags popping up, "Sing for Nia." The original mocking video was still circulating, but now new comments appeared, sparked by whispers of what some claimed had happened inside room 307. Wait, did she really move? This kid's serious. He's still singing. Maybe it ain't so crazy after all. The words swirled in Malik's head as he set the phone down. For the first time, the ridicule wasn't alone. Hope was finding its way into the noise. He sat back on his bed, clutching the mic. His voice still felt hoarse, but his resolve had never been stronger. If she had moved once, she could move again. By the end of the week, Malik's name was everywhere. What had started as a cruel joke online was shifting into something else. The hashtag #SingForNia spread across Atlanta, picked up by local community pages, church groups, and even a few musicians who shared clips of themselves singing in solidarity. What some kids meant to mock was becoming a movement. On Saturday evening, Malik arrived at the hospital to find a crowd gathered outside. Folding chairs lined the sidewalk, candles flickered in glass jars, and the warm hum of voices filled the air. Auntie Tasha stood at the center, megaphone in hand, her presence commanding attention. "Tonight," she called out, "we lift up Nia Daniels with the power of our voices. We don't wait on permission. We don't wait on miracles. We are the miracle." The crowd cheered, clapping and stomping in rhythm. Malik froze at the edge, overwhelmed. He had never seen so many people united for something that began with his trembling voice. Auntie Tasha spotted him and waved. There he is, the boy who believed when nobody else would. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. Malik's stomach twisted, his instinct to shrink away stronger than ever. But the sound of encouragement rose around him, urging him forward. Slowly, he stepped closer. A gospel choir from a nearby church began to sing, their harmonies rich and soulful, echoing through the city street. Malik felt the sound seep into his bones. It reminded him of Grandma Ruth's humming in the kitchen, of the hymns in the church basement where his gift first found air. One of the choir leaders handed him the microphone. "Your turn, son. Show us what you got." His palms slick with sweat, Malik looked out at the faces waiting for him. The fear of Corey and Jamal's laughter still lingered, but now it was drowned out by this sea of hope. He lifted the mic, closed his eyes and began to sing. The first note wavered, but the choir rose behind him, cushioning his voice. With each verse his confidence grew. His stutter vanished, replaced by a sound that was raw, aching, and alive. The crowd swayed, some lifting their hands, others wiping tears. Malik sang as if Nia herself could hear him through the hospital walls. And inside on the third floor, Dr. Jacob stood at Nia's bedside, eyes glued to the monitor. Her pen scratched furiously across the chart as the faint spikes appeared again, sharper this time. When Malik finished, the crowd erupted in cheers, chanting his name, clapping him on the back as he stepped down. His face burned, but this time it wasn't from shame. It was from a fire he couldn't ignore. Auntie Tasha threw her arm around him. "You see that? You ain't just some outcast kid. You're a leader, Malik, whether you wanted it or not." He shook his head, still dazed. I'm just singing." "Exactly," she said. "And look what it's doing." Later that night, as the candles burned low, Malik sat on the curb outside the hospital, listening to the last notes of music drift into the humid Atlanta air. For the first time, he didn't feel invisible. He didn't feel like the boy who stuttered, the boy mocked for daring to believe. He felt like someone who could change things. Above him, the hospital windows glowed faintly. He whispered under his breath, "Hold on, Nia, we're coming for you." The sound was soft but steady, and for the first time, he truly believed she might hear. The Monday after the vigil, Malik walked into school with his hood pulled low. Whispers followed him down the hallway, but this time they weren't sharp with laughter. Some kids nodded at him. Others whispered, "That's the dude from the video." For once he wasn't invisible. But not all the attention felt good. He still remembered the sting of Corey and Jamal's mockery, the way their laughter had pierced deeper than any words. So when Corey appeared at the end of the hallway, leaning against the lockers, Malik's stomach tightened. "Yo, Malik," Corey called, his voice lower than usual. Malik kept walking, eyes on the floor. "Wait up, man." Something in Corey's tone stopped him. It wasn't mocking. It wasn't cruel. It sounded tired. Malik turned slowly, his jaw tight. Corey scratched the back of his neck, glancing around before speaking. "Look, I know I've been on your case, filming you, laughing, posting, all that. But I ain't here to mess with you today." Malik crossed his arms. "Then why you here?" Corey shifted uncomfortably. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a weight Malik hadn't seen before. "You remember last year? My sister, the car accident." Malik nodded faintly. The school had gone quiet for weeks after it happened. "She was in the hospital for months," Corey said, his voice cracking. "Coma. Same way as Nia. And man, I used to sit in that room talking to her, begging her to wake up. But nothing happened. People told me I was stupid for even trying. So when I saw you singing, I laughed, 'cause I was scared, 'cause I knew what that felt like. Wanting so bad for somebody to come back." The hallway around them buzzed with lockers slamming and sneakers squeaking, but for Malik, the world narrowed to just those words. "You were scared," Malik repeated quietly, his voice almost trembling. Corey nodded. "Yeah, and I took it out on you. Shouldn't have. My sister, she never woke up. And I didn't want you to believe in something that could just crush you." Malik's throat tightened. For the first time he saw Corey not as the bully who mocked him, but as a boy carrying his own hurt. "I get it," Malik said softly. "But Nia, she moved. Dr. Jacobs saw it. She ain't gone. Not yet." Corey's eyes flickered with something Malik couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. buried under fear. You really think your singing did that? Malik hesitated, then nodded firmly. I don't just think it, I know it. For a long moment, Corey didn't speak. Then he muttered, I hope you're right, man. I really do. That evening, Malik sat on the porch of his grandmother's house, the air heavy with the smell of rain on pavement. Auntie Tasha was scrolling on her phone nearby, shaking her head. These kids out here arguing online about you, she said. Half of them saying you a joke, half of them calling you a miracle worker. Guess you trending, Malik. He chuckled softly, though the sound carried no joy. It don't matter what they say. Only thing that matters is her. Tasha put her phone down and studied him. You starting to sound like somebody with purpose. That scares me and makes me proud at the same time. Malik gazed into the distance, the weight of Corey's words still on his mind. For the first time, he realized the laughter hadn't just been about cruelty, it had been about fear, about pain, unspoken. He whispered to himself, almost like a prayer, I won't stop, not until she comes back. The vow lingered in the damp night air, unshaken by doubt. The hospital room was dim except for the glow of the monitors. Malik sat in the chair beside Nia's bed, the microphone clutched in his hands, his heart pounding like a drum. Dr. Jacobs stood near the machines, her eyes steady but alert, clipboard ready. The quiet felt heavier than usual, almost electric, like the air before a storm. Malik took a deep breath. Hey, Nia, he whispered, voice trembling. It's me again. I know you're tired of hearing me by now, but I ain't quitting. He closed his eyes and began to sing. The first notes were shaky, but the melody soon wrapped around him, stronger with each word. His stutter dissolved as the song flowed, the lyrics carrying the weight of everything he couldn't say out loud. He sang about holding on, about not being alone, about a world waiting for her return. Dr. Jacobs glanced at the monitors, her pen froze mid-air. A flicker, clearer than before. She leaned closer, her voice low. Keep going, Malik. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he didn't stop. His voice cracked, raw and imperfect, but full of desperate hope. And then it happened. Nia's hand twitched. Malik's song faltered, his eyes flying open. Did you see that? Her fingers curled again, faint but unmistakable. The monitor beeped louder, recording a surge of brain activity. Dr. Jacobs gasped, her professional mask breaking. Yes, Malik, she's responding. Tears blurred his vision. He leaned forward, gripping her hand gently. Nia, it's me. I'm right here. Come back. Her eyelids fluttered, slow and fragile, like someone struggling to break free from heavy chains. Malik's chest heaved as he kept singing, softer now, coaxing her awake with every note. And then her eyes opened. Not fully, just a sliver, but enough to see the faint gleam of life staring back at him. Her lips parted, a dry whisper escaping. First, Malik? He froze, his voice choking in his throat. Yeah, it's me, I'm here. Dr. Jacobs's eyes widened. She pressed the intercom for assistance, but her voice was thick with awe. We have movement, patient responsive. Nurses rushed in, their footsteps loud against the linoleum. One gasped. Lord, she's waking. The room filled with noise, orders, questions, the buzz of machines adjusting, but Malik didn't hear any of it. His focus stayed on Nia, her faint smile, her weak attempt to squeeze his hand. I told you, he whispered, tears streaming down his cheeks. I told you you'd hear me. Her eyes closed again, but this time not in silence. It was the exhaustion of someone fighting their way back. Hours later, Malik sat in the waiting area, his legs bouncing nervously. Nurses passed by, voices hushed but excited. He caught pieces of their words. Remarkable response. Never seen this before. Music stimulation. Corey appeared suddenly, shifting awkwardly near the chairs. Hey. Malik wiped his face, still raw from tears. What you want? Corey's voice was low, almost reverent. People saying she moved 'cause of you, that true? Malik hesitated, then nodded slowly. She said my name. Corey's eyes widened, disbelief and awe battling in his expression. He swallowed hard. Man, I guess I owe you more than an apology. Malik didn't reply, but the silence between them felt different now, not heavy with anger, but with something new. Respect, maybe. When Dr. Jacobs finally returned, her face carried both exhaustion and wonder. She crouched beside Malik. She's stable, but what happened today is it changes things. You did what medicine alone couldn't. Malik stared at the floor, his voice quiet but firm. I just sang. No, she said, shaking her head. You believed. That's what made the difference. Her words settled deep in his chest, a truth he hadn't dared claim before. For the first time, Malik didn't feel like an outcast. He felt like someone whose voice had power, and now there was no going back. Grandma Ruth sat at the kitchen table, her Bible open but unread, her fingers drumming against the wood. The news of Naya's awakening had already begun to spread, whispered in phone calls and text messages, shared between neighbors and church members. But for Ruth, it stirred something deeper than excitement. It stirred fear. When Malik walked in, still flushed from the hospital, she looked up sharply. Sit down, boy. He froze. Grandma, I need to... Sit, she repeated, her tone heavy. Reluctantly, he dropped into the chair across from her. The room smelled of collard greens simmering on the stove, but the warmth of the scent didn't soften her gaze. I heard what happened, she said. Heard that girl opened her eyes. Heard she said your name. Malik's chest swelled, pride flickering despite her stern tone. She did, I told you, Grandma, she heard me. Ruth slammed her hand against the table, the sound echoing. Don't you dare think this is all on you. I lost your mama too young, Malik. Watched her fight for breath until the Lord took her home. I won't stand by while you chase after something that could break you. Her voice cracked at the edges, anger tangled with grief. Malik swallowed hard, his throat tight. This ain't the same. Nia's still here. I saw it. Dr. Jacobs saw it. She ain't gone. Tears welled in Ruth's eyes, though her jaw stayed firm. Faith is one thing. Foolishness is another. Music don't heal bodies. God does. The words stung, but Malik leaned forward, his own voice trembling with conviction. What if God's using my voice to do it? What if this is how he works? For a moment, silence filled the kitchen, heavy and raw. Ruth's lips quivered, but she said nothing. Later that evening, Auntie Tasha arrived, her bangles jingling as she dropped her purse on the counter. She took one look at Ruth's tight expression and Malik's red eyes, and sighed. What we fighting about now? Not fighting, Ruth snapped. I'm trying to save this boy from heartbreak. Tasha crossed her arms. Or you scared he's stronger than you give him credit for? Ruth shot her a glare. Don't you start, Tasha. But Tasha stepped closer, resting a hand on Malik's shoulder. Baby, you keep singing. If that girl heard you once, she'll hear you again. Don't let fear shut you down. Malik looked between them, torn. His grandmother's fear was carved from loss, but Tasha's fire reminded him of the movement building outside those hospital doors. Both voices pulled at him, both born from love. Finally, Ruth's shoulders slumped. She reached for a handkerchief, dabbing at her eyes. Your mama used to sing too, she whispered. Voice so sweet it could quiet a room. She believed her voice could change the world. But it couldn't save her. Malik's heart ached at the mention of his mother. I know, but maybe it can save Nia. The words hung between them, trembling but unbreakable. The next morning, Malik returned to the hospital with Ruth at his side. Her steps were slow, her face set in a mask of determination. Inside Nia's room, Dr. Jacobs greeted them warmly, explaining the plan to monitor her vitals while Malik sang again. Ruth stood by the bed, clutching her Bible, her lips pressed tight. As Malik began to sing, his voice low and steady, something in her broke. Her own voice, raspy but strong, rose to meet his. Together their harmonies filled the sterile room with warmth, gospel weaving through the machine's steady hum. Malik glanced at her, stunned. Ruth didn't meet his eyes, but her voice carried the weight of a lifetime of faith and sorrow. She wasn't ready to admit she believed, but she was willing to join him. And that was enough. The hospital room was unusually still that morning, the sun casting soft streaks of light across the floor. Malik sat at Nia's bedside, microphone in hand, his grandmother standing close behind him. Dr. Jacobs checked the monitors one last time, then nodded. "Whenever you're ready, Malik." His palms were damp, but he lifted the mic anyway. He began softly, his voice weaving through the notes of an old hymn, each word trembling with both fear and hope. Grandma Ruth's voice soon joined his, deeper and weathered, the harmony surrounding Nia like a protective embrace. Minutes passed, the room filled with sound. Then, without warning, Nia's fingers twitched again, sharper this time, not the faint flutter of before, but a determined squeeze against the blanket. Malik gasped, nearly dropping the microphone. "Nia!" His voice cracked. "It's me!" "Malik!" Her eyelids fluttered. A murmur escaped her lips, broken but alive. "Malik!" The sound hit him like lightning. Tears blurred his vision. "Yes, it's me. I'm right here." Dr. Jacobs's hands shook slightly as she adjusted the equipment. "She's waking," she whispered, awe slipping into her professional tone. "Keep singing, Malik. Don't stop." His voice grew stronger, filled with urgency now. He sang the chorus again, pouring every ounce of his soul into the words. Slowly, painfully, Nia's eyes opened. They were glassy, confused, but unmistakably hers. She blinked, staring at him. Then, in a voice hoarse and weak, she managed, "You still sing off-key." The room erupted with emotion. Malik choked out a laugh through his tears, grabbing her hand. "You came back." Grandma Ruth pressed the handkerchief to her eyes, whispering, "Thank you, Lord." Nia's lips curved into the faintest smile. Her gaze moved to the machines, the people around her, and then back to Malik. "I heard you, all this time. Your voice, it kept me here." Malik couldn't speak. His throat was too thick with tears. He simply held her hand tighter, unwilling to let go. Outside the room, word spread quickly. Nurses whispered down the halls. Staff exchanged incredulous glances. By the time Malik stepped into the waiting area hours later, the news had reached the crowd outside. Auntie Tasha was the first to rush in, her phone already recording. "Baby girl's awake?" Malik nodded, still in shock. His voice was barely more than a whisper. "She's awake." Tasha wiped her eyes, then turned the camera toward him. "Y'all hear that? She's awake because this boy never stopped believing." The crowd outside erupted in cheers, their voices rising in celebration. Songs broke out, clapping echoed against the hospital walls, and strangers hugged one another as though they'd all been family. Malik stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. The same city that once mocked him was now lifting his name in gratitude, but none of it mattered compared to the girl lying in that bed, alive, smiling, calling him off-key with that same spark he thought he'd never see again. Later, when the noise calmed, Malik returned to her room. Nia was propped up slightly, her voice still weak but stronger than before. She looked at him and whispered, "You didn't give up on me." Malik shook his head, eyes still wet. "I couldn't. You told me not to hide. So I didn't. Not this time." Her hand squeezed his again, faint but certain. "Don't ever hide again." In that moment, surrounded by beeping machines and the faint hum of life returning, Malik realized the truth. His voice wasn't just sound, it was survival. And it had brought her back. The days following Nia's awakening moved like a whirlwind. News outlets showed up at the hospital, microphones pointed at anyone willing to speak. Headlines called it a miracle of music, though Dr. Jacobs carefully described it as a remarkable medical response to auditory stimulation. For Malik, it wasn't about miracles or science. It was about Nia's eyes opening, her laughter returning, her hand squeezing his when he sang. At school, everything had changed. The same kids who once mocked him now crowded around his locker, asking questions, offering handshakes. Jamal muttered an awkward "my bad" one morning before slipping away. Even Corey, quieter than usual, gave Malik a nod of respect in the hallway. But the most unexpected shift came from the school itself. Principal Harris announced in assembly, "We are proud of one of our own, Malik Carter, whose voice has shown the power of perseverance and community." In light of recent events, we are reinstating our music program. The gym erupted with cheers. Malik sat frozen, unsure whether to smile or hide. Mr. Rivers, standing at the edge of the bleachers, caught his eye and gave him a proud nod. That afternoon, Mr. Rivers pulled him aside. There's a summer arts academy in New York. They offer scholarships to students with unique voices. I've already sent them your recordings. Malik's eyes widened. You did what? I believe in you, Rivers said simply. Always have. They'll reach out soon. You deserve the chance to grow, to stand on bigger stages. Malik's chest tightened. Part of him was thrilled, but another part whispered doubt. Could he really belong anywhere beyond these streets, beyond this hospital room? Back at Grady, Nia was recovering, her strength returning slowly but surely. One afternoon, Malik sat by her bed, strumming a borrowed guitar, his voice weaving through chords. Nia chuckled, still weak but playful. You're getting better. Still not perfect, though, he laughed. Guess you'll just have to keep coaching me. Her smile softened. Promise me you won't stop. Even when I'm out of here. I promise, he said, the words carrying more weight than any vow he'd ever spoken. Word of Malik's story spread beyond Atlanta. Community leaders invited him to sing at gatherings. Churches opened their pulpits to him. One weekend, he stood at the community center, microphone in hand, facing a crowd of neighbors who had come not out of pity, but pride. He took a deep breath and began to sing. This time there was no trembling, no hesitation. His stutter had no hold on him in song. The melody rose strong and sure, filled with the grit of his struggle and the hope of his triumph. Children in the front row swayed. Parents wiped tears. The same streets that once felt heavy with silence now echoed with his voice. After the performance, Grandma Ruth hugged him tight, her eyes wet. Your mama would have been proud, she whispered, and so am I. Malik's throat tightened. For years, he had felt like an outcast, someone with nothing but a broken voice and a shadow of dreams. Now for the first time, he felt like his voice belonged to something bigger, a legacy of resilience, of faith, of culture that stretched far beyond him. That night, lying in bed with the scholarship letter sitting on his desk, Malik whispered into the dark, I'm not hiding anymore. The city outside buzzed with life, but inside his world had shifted. His voice, once mocked, once silenced, was now a beacon. And it wasn't just his anymore, it belonged to everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to breathe again into the corners of Malik's world. Nia was out of intensive care now, her cheeks returning to their warm glow, her laughter a little stronger each day. She still tired easily, but each visit carried more light, more life. One afternoon, Malik sat beside her bed with the guitar resting across his lap. He strummed gently, humming a tune that had once lived only in his private recordings. Nia tapped her fingers against the blanket, out of rhythm but full of joy. You're getting better, she teased, her voice raspy but playful. Malik smiled. Still off key? Always, she grinned, but I like it that way. He laughed, the sound spilling out easily. Every note he sang now felt like proof of what they had endured, her fight to return, his fight to be heard. On Sunday morning, Malik stood in the hospital chapel. The space was small, filled with polished wooden pews and the faint scent of candle wax. Patients, families, nurses, and neighbors filled the room, drawn by the story of the boy who sang life back into silence. Grandma Ruth sat in the front row, Bible in hand, her eyes steady on him. Auntie Tasha waved from the side, her phone ready but her heart full. Even Corey slipped into the back, leaning against the wall, his expression quieter than usual. Dr. Jacob stood near the door, arms crossed, not as a skeptic anymore, but as a witness who believed in what she had seen. Malik stepped up to the small podium, his microphone crackling softly. His hands trembled at first, but then he thought of Nia's voice saying, "Don't ever hide again." He began to sing. The first notes rose, unsteady but alive, carried by the acoustics of the chapel. Soon the room was filled with the sound of gospel, the kind of song that carried weight and healing in every line. Ruth's voice rose beside him, cracked but powerful, a harmony born of years of faith. Others joined in, one by one, until the chapel swelled with voices united. Malik sang louder, no longer afraid of the cracks or imperfections. His stutter had no place here. Each verse was a declaration. He was no longer the boy mocked in the hallways, the boy laughed at by strangers. He was a voice that carried hope. By the final note, the chapel was silent, except for the soft sobs of those moved by the music. Malik lowered the microphone, his chest heaving, and whispered, "Thank you." After the service, Ruth embraced him tightly. "So you found your sound, baby," she said, "and you found what it's for." Malik pressed his face against her shoulder, letting her words settle deep. Later, back upstairs, he found Nia waiting with a smile that nearly undid him. "I heard you from down the hall," she said. "Told you your voice could change the world." He shook his head, grinning through tears. "It just changed mine." That night, Malik sat at his desk, the scholarship letter still on top of his books. The city outside buzzed, headlights streaking past the window. He whispered into the quiet, "I'll keep singing, always." Because now he knew his voice wasn't just a gift, it was a bridge, from silence to sound, from doubt to faith, from despair to healing. And just like that, the outcast boy who once sang alone in the dark now carried a sound that healed, not only the girl in room 307, but everyone who had ever doubted the power of a voice. So, if you've been moved by Malik's story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful journeys like his. And before you go, click the video suggested on your screen right now. You won't believe what happened to the girl in the wheelchair next.